Welcome back to TWINN, This Week in Nerd News number 27. In less than 5 minutes, I want to share with you some topics that we need to pay attention to in our industry of technology and cybersecurity. Boy, do we have a story here today to start out with. This one is arguably the largest supply chain attack, with a demand of $70 million to release a key that will decrypt all victims' computers. There are so many questions around this one that, of course, we had to immediately review our own security posture. There are two main RMM systems that we use here at Nerds On Site. One is ConnectWise, and while they have a confidence-boosting statement to the world, the reality is that the initial attack vectors was with a zero-day vulnerability. So that means anybody and everybody is potentially vulnerable to a criminal being the first to discover and use a vulnerability. This time, it hit Kaseya and its customers. The next time, it could be someone else, even someone who has exercised the highest level of due diligence. What this Kaseya incident makes clear is that we need to be vigilant in applying better ways of doing security. The second RMM tool we use is for security-managed gateways. This is not outsourced to third party, but it's protected in-house by being reachable only over a site-to-site VPN tunnel that's monitoring every security gateway client. It means that even our RMM tool, if it had a discovered zero-day vulnerability, our incident and our instance wouldn't be discoverable because it's not accessible from anywhere in the world. It's not accessible from the internet, as the RMM server is stealth with no service listening if you were to port scan or brute force attack, and no access from the internal network behind the security gateways. So we believe and ask vendors in this space to consider a variation of the second model, as it's the most practical path forward for RMMs for other endpoints as well. In other non-patching news, we have Microsoft failing to patch a critical vulnerability with which you will need your RMM tool to rapidly deploy a prevention mechanism, and that is to disable print spooling, especially from domain controllers. If you haven't done that yet, stop right now and do that first. Nerds On Site managed clients are experiencing this mitigation today. In this next story, we see agencies from the US warning of brute force attacks on networks. Brute force attacks are not always the first point of attack, as attackers find recon and social engineering and phishing to be way more effective. But the slow pace of our society adopting better security practices means that this is now an effective enough mechanism of another season of attacks. It's a good time to be stealth to the internet, meaning that you have no internet-facing systems, and additionally treat your internal networks as hostile and apply good practices everywhere, especially zero trust. This next story seems almost benign, but we shouldn't ignore that apps on mobile phones are still the easiest entrance for attackers to steal credentials, so please be careful of what apps you and your loved ones install and what apps are allowed on business devices. Zero trust. In the last story of today, we look at Double Down being taken down, Double VPN being taken down. That was an unintentional slip there. But I'm really holding back the many moments that I am often tempted to say, I told you so. And this is one of those. And I know that many of us that have used third-party VPNs meant well. But if there's one takeaway here, it is this. If you need a VPN, run it yourself. Those are our top stories today. See you next week.